we were able to find the values of the 6 trig functions of these three angles, 30, 45, and 60, using these two special triangles. So we knew the ratio of the sides of these two triangles, and we knew that what the angles were, so we were able to determine the values of those 6 trig functions. If the angles were any other value, and there's infinitely many other values, right, with all the decimals, it's not going to be as easy to calculate the exact value of the trig functions for those angles. And so for that we're going to need to use our calculator. That'll make it a lot easier. And you've probably noticed that your calculator only has a sine, cosine, and tangent button. And so we can find the cotangent, the secant, and the cosecant using our calculator. But before we do that, we need to explore how the trig functions are reciprocals of one another. And so let's look at sine theta. We know that sine theta is the opposite over the hypotenuse. And let's look at cosecant theta. We know that the cosecant of an angle is the hypotenuse over the opposite. And so that means that these two functions are reciprocals of one another, right? They are fractions that are flipped. And so that means that the sine of theta will be equal to 1 divided by the cosecant of theta. And so the sine of theta is opposite over hypotenuse, and the cosecant of theta is hypotenuse over opposite. And when we divide by a fraction, we change that to multiply, and we multiply by the reciprocal. And we don't need the 1 times here, that's just opposite over hypotenuse. And so that means that 1 divided by the cosecant is equal to the sine. And so these two trig functions are reciprocals of one another. And it's also true, and we could show it the same way, that the cosecant of theta is 1 divided by the sine of theta. And so if I wanted to calculate the cosecant of an angle, I would calculate the sine of that angle and then take 1 divided by that answer, and that would give me the value of the cosecant. And this is true for cosine theta is equal to 1 divided by the secant of theta, and that means that secant theta is equal to 1 divided by cosine of theta. And so again, if you want to know the secant of an angle, you take 1 divided by the cosine of that angle, and the same is also true for tangent. Tangent theta is equal to 1 divided by the cotangent of theta, and that means that cotangent of theta is 1 divided by the tangent of theta.